So I am a perfectionist, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that I was the firstborn in my family, and my parents are Filipino, and there was a lot of pressure in the Filipino culture in general when it comes to your children. It's a lot more strict than at least the North American culture that I grew up in Canada. And I was Mormon, and so when you're Mormon, there's a certain kind of mold that you're trying to fit in. There were certain things that you had to do, and so I think a mixture of all of that, all these things taken into consideration, is sort of like the perfect recipe for my perfectionism. And being a perfectionist can make it very difficult in life. However, through my journey into becoming Catholic, and also just in journey of being Catholic, it never ends, right? It keeps going. It goes on and on and on until death. I find that the more I surrender myself to the will of God, the easier life is. And just to clarify, I don't mean that life gets super easy. I get everything I want. God's like, yeah, you want that? I'll get it for you. Here you go. Boom, 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 kind of thing. No. That's not what I mean. I still experience pain and sorrow, as well as happiness and joy. But when it comes to times of trials and tribulation, I find that it is much easier for me. I can cope with it better the more I surrender or offer up this pain and sorrow, this trouble that I have, to God. I'm able to bear that cross with more humility. And I know it's not just a Catholic thing, it's just a general Christian thing, that when you are a Christian and you really understand the depths of what God went through, suffering, and offering up this suffering is of great help in life, in going through it. Like I said, it's not just I offer it up and God makes it super easier for me. No, I take this suffering and this whatever is going on, positive as well as negative, I give it to God, and He does what He wants with it. And so this is my word for the year. I know it's a little cheesy, and I was inspired from someone I know, and I thought about it. Okay, if I were to give a word for the year, I thought, why not surrender? I surrender it to God. I offer it up to Him, and He does His great work. This is so difficult. Like I said, I'm a perfectionist. And when you're a perfectionist, it's a thing of control, right? You want things done a certain way. You want things done this way so that you know what will happen and that you can control everything. In general, human beings, we want to control everything so that we know what happens and that we can figure things out. But that's not how it works when it comes to God. I want to share 2 experiences, and these 2 experiences both have to do with my 2 children. I had 2 C-sections, and both experiences were completely different. Okay, so let me just backtrack. Before my C-sections, my husband and I had been married for about 5 years, and we wanted to try. We were not Catholic at that time, but 5 years into our marriage, we wanted to have children. However, we were already practicing what you would probably know as natural family planning. We didn't use any contraceptives. We just basically followed whatever my body was saying. If you don't know what that is, it's not just the calendar, but I digress. I'd been doing this for basically ever since the beginning of our marriage, and there was never any slip up. And so we decide to have children, and nothing. A year goes by, 2 years goes by. And in 2018, one of my relatives, who did not want any children at all, for the longest time, everybody thought that she was never going to have any children, got pregnant. And I was happy for her, but I was also so bitter because I thought, well, I want children. How come I don't have any children? How come she gets to have children? She didn't even want children, but now she's going to have children. We moved back to France, and I become more devout to the Rosary, praying a daily Rosary. And I would always pray to Our Dear Lady for a child. And after a while, you kind of, for those of you who don't know, when you're trying to have children and it's still not happening, you end up kind of giving up on the idea. And that's where we were, despite me praying to Mary to intercede, to ask for help, and to Saint Gerard as well. We were slowly giving up on the idea that we were going to have children. And for those of you that probably know, that's when, I got pregnant. I mean, those of you who know that, you try to conceive, you don't. And then I know there are people who end up adopting, and then as soon as they adopt, they get pregnant. And the woman gets pregnant. It's only the women get pregnant. Anyway, but that's what happened. I got pregnant. And that was amazing. I didn't think that we would ever have children at that point. But I got pregnant. And we were so happy. And then, March 2020, the pandemic hit. And in hindsight, the Lord, this is the key thing to do. The key thing to do is to look back on your life, and then you realize God's work and God's plan was always there. God spared me having a child, being pregnant in Canada during pandemic. I am very, very happy that I was not pregnant in Canada during the pandemic. So God spared me of that. So fast forward, let me keep going. My pregnancy was normal, super easy. Apart from being nauseous here and there, I ate a lot. I slept a lot. I would have like 10, 11, 12-hour nights, and everything was fine. I didn't even have contractions, or at least I didn't think I was having contractions. I thought they were kicks because they were painless. I only had painless contractions throughout my whole pregnancy. So everything was fine until the day that my son was born. He stopped moving. And when he stopped moving, after a few hours, I decided, I told my husband we have to go to the hospital because something's wrong. He's not moving. No matter what I did, I would eat chocolate. For those of you who are pregnant, who've ever been pregnant, chocolate works to help the baby move, and it didn't work. No matter what I did, I would sing. I did everything, and he wouldn't move. So we get to the hospital, they take a look, and they said that there's hardly any amniotic fluid left, and this baby has to be born today. And he's not really moving. And so they tried to induce me, but I could tell from the way that the midwife was looking at the sonogram, the way the midwife was looking at it, I knew it would end up in a C-section because her eyes told me. And you know when someone, despite the doctor saying, oh, we're going to try this naturally, you can tell just from their eyes, the tone. So they gave me the general epidural, which basically means that I couldn't feel anything from here down, from my breasts down. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't move, I couldn't stand. And after those 2 hours, they said, we have to give you an emergency C-section. He's not coming out, nothing's working, and we got to get him out. And these few moments felt so quick. My husband was whisked away. He was supposed to get dressed or something. They gave me more of the epidural to the point where I really couldn't feel anything. I could kind of feel my fingers tingle from all the anesthesia that was going through my body. And I was crying so much because I just didn't know how to feel. It was overwhelming. And I remember the midwife coming up to me and rubbing my back and saying, like, why are you crying? Is it because of this? And like I just told her it's just so much. It's too much. It's my first kid. I don't know what's going on. Emergency section was not in my birth plan, and it was just so much. I was just bawling my eyes out. It went very, very quick. I eventually was stripped down. I lied down, and if you don't know, C-sections, in a C-section, you are lying down like this, with your arms out, just like Christ on the cross. And because of all the drugs, you become, I remember shaking, uncontrollably shaking, and it wasn't me. It's an effect of the drug that they give you. I remember asking for my husband, where's my husband? Where's my husband? Is he coming? Oh, he's getting dressed. He'll be here. And they're trying to calm me down because I was crying. And then I just kept asking for my husband, is he coming? Because they said he was coming. Yes, he's coming. And then all of a sudden you hear incision, 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 which means incision, incision, incision. It's this, and then they cut me open, and my husband wasn't there. And the whole time I was praying. I was like, Lord, please help. Lord, please help. Mother Mary. I remember praying Ave Maria over and over and over and over and over again. Because I was so scared. And they got him out. And they took him away. They said, everything's fine. He's okay. They've taken him away. But like I said, in the tone and in their eyes, that you could tell that something was wrong. And my husband as well. Apparently my husband was waiting in the hall, and my husband only saw them whisk him away, and he knew that something was wrong. And I didn't see my kid nor my husband for the next 3 hours. They took me to the recovery room, and I didn't see him. I didn't see my husband. I asked for my husband, I asked for my child, what's going on? No one could tell me. It wasn't until about 2 hours in that a midwife came and asked if I was all right and if I had seen my son yet, because they're going to take him away to another hospital with a bigger NICU. I said, no, I haven't seen my child nor my husband since I gave birth. Thank God that this midwife was there to ask, because she actually asked for me to be able to see my kid before they left and before they took him away. And I got to see my son, and he was just so small, and he had all these tubes tied, and I just remembered thinking, Lord, please take care of him. Please don't let him die on the way. Please let me just see him one more time. There, alive. Please let me see him alive. I only could barely reach over and touch his arm, and it was hard because they had to take him away about 10 minutes later. And I had no idea whether or not I would see him alive, because when he came out, he was having a hard time breathing, and it was just very difficult. But thank God I got to see him. They took me to the hospital the day after. My husband had to drive to the hospital, and he was there. It was very difficult at the hospital in general, and I was very bitter because I couldn't hold my son properly. Recovery was very, very hard for me the first time. After a C-section, after this major surgery, within 24 hours, they make you stand up, and it's just to get, everything, all the blood and everything circulating again, because it's not good to stay immobile for a long time after you've had surgery. It can lead to blood clots and things like that. And so I remember before they took me to see him, before they took me to the other hospital, I had to have basically 2-3 people help me get up and just struggle to get up. And it just feels like a truck hit you, and everything inside in your abdomen is gonna fall out, and you are basically every step is a real effort. And all you want to do is just sit back down. And yeah, in general, it was just not a good experience at this hospital. At both of the hospitals for me, when we stayed in recovery, it was hard. But after 10 days, we were able to take my son home. And that was awesome. That was so great. Okay, now for my daughter. And just so you know, my son is completely healthy. Super, super energetic kid. He's great. My daughter, same thing. Pregnancy, super easy. I mean, I wouldn't mind getting pregnant again because being pregnant was fine for me. It gets uncomfortable near the end, but for the most part, for me, I didn't have any problems. However, the idea of a C-section was always in the back of my mind, and it depended on who I was talking to. So some midwives would tell me, oh, you're definitely gonna have to get a C-section, and then others would say, oh no, you can get a VBAC. But at the hospital I gave birth at, they said that we could try for a VBAC, and I was happy about that. I was happy to have this final answer that I didn't have to think about. So like I said, everything was fine again for the pregnancy until the day of my daughter's birth, and I got my first ever real painful contractions the night before she was born. I got contractions, and I didn't know they were contractions because I have had the same things for other health reasons. It's the same kind of feeling, and so I wasn't sure. But I was in labor. I got to the hospital. My husband took me to the hospital and unfortunately had to leave me there because he had to take care of our son because no one could watch him. And I got to the hospital and they said, yeah, you are in labor. These are labor contractions. And so you're going to have a baby today. And they said, all right, we're going to get you ready. Would you like the classic labor room or would you like a more physiologically friendly room? And I said, yes, the second, because I wanted to try to do it as natural as possible. And then I said, oh, just so you know, I did have a C-section before, so just so you know. And then she looked at me and said, oh, well, I guess we can't actually give you the second room. We're going to have to give you the classical room just in case because of your very recent C-section. And for a second, I had this, oh no, it's going to happen, isn't it? A thought in my head. But then I let it go. I said, okay, that's fine. I will go and do that. And then at this point, they said, we're going to have to get you pre-prepared basically for a C-section just in case. And I reluctantly said yes. And when they gave me the epidural and the pain started to go away, I really didn't like it. I hated the fact that I couldn't feel any pain anymore. And you might think, okay, you should be relieved. You know, there are many women that would love an epidural and are happy when they're given the epidural. Yes, but I don't associate pain as something completely bad. Being numb is way worse, in my opinion. Pain tells you something important, and it is essential. It is very important in labor. And so I was, with every contraction, I knew the baby was coming and that there was going to be an end to this pain, and that helped a lot. But when they took it completely away, I thought I was going to be able to have the little button that you inject the epidural when you want. But it was automatic. It was every 15 minutes I would get a hit of the epidural. And I basically didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel any more contractions. And slowly but surely, I started to be more and more immobile. And I was in labor. Things were advancing. And then all of a sudden they stopped. I was dilated at 7. And then it completely closed. And 5 hours in, they said, we're going to have to cut you open. We're going to have to give you a C-section. The midwife came in and told me that. And I looked at her just devastated, angry, pissed off, and the look of like, I knew you were going to do this. I knew we were going to do this. Why didn't you just say, we're going to do this? That was my thought. And she knew, and she could tell. And at the moment, I remember like in my head, I was blaming everybody. I was blaming the surgeon that was going to cut me open, the midwife. Like, I thought, why can't I give birth the way I want to? It's your fault, surgeon. It's your fault, midwife. It's your fault, everybody. Everybody, it's your fault. And I'm alone. I'm completely alone. I'm gonna give birth alone. And at that moment when I thought that, I thought, no, I'm not giving birth alone. I've been through this before. Same thing happened. And God was there. And all of heaven, Mother Mary, Father Joseph, all the saints and angels were there praying for me, for my son, as they are now praying for me and my daughter. I'm not alone. And when I thought that, that's when it changed. That's when everything in my mind changed. And I accepted it. And I said, God, thy will be done. Do what you need to do. I surrender to you and your will. I offer everything, this pain, this frustration, my daughter. I offer it all up to you. Do what you will. It's out of my hands. It's out of my control. And that's when everything changed. My mind was so much more at ease. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was still like so many things happening, so many things going on. But this time going into the emergency C-section, I wasn't crying the whole time. I was just praying and reminding myself that God is there. And Mother Mary is there praying for me, interceding. And are all these people praying for me? My husband is there with me, praying for me. I didn't worry anymore because I knew it was in God's hands. I couldn't do anything. And my daughter came out super healthy, was fine. She was crying. And then when they brought her to me, I got to, be with her immediately. They put her to my cheek. She was crying. They put her to my cheek and she stopped crying. And that was nice. That was great. And this time recovery was so fast. The next morning when they told me to get up, I got up. No help from anybody, not even from the little bar that you pull up. It was just me pushing with the sidebars all by myself to walk from my bed to the room, to the toilet, basically. I was there. My daughter got to stay with me the night of. After I recovered, they brought her to my room. And the fact that I remember that everything is in God's hands, it just made everything easier. Okay, I'm going to get up. It's going to be for God. This is for my daughter, for my son, my husband, and for myself. I'm going to get up. No problem. And even the midwives were surprised at how fast I was recovering. I was there for the full 5 days, alone, but not alone. And it just taught me to give all the control to God. So, as you can see, these two very similar situations, I had two different outlooks, and the first was hard. It's hard. I know it's hard to give it all to God because we want the control. But the more you give to God, the more He will take control. I mean, who is better to control your life than God? We think that we know what's best, but we really don't. We might think that something is good, But God always plans something greater than what we come up with. Had this not happened, I probably wouldn't be talking to you about it right now. I'd probably just think like, oh, C-sections happen, every pregnancy is different. But because I went through it, it's just, I want to let you know that if you're going through this, you're not alone. And even the fact that I had to lie down crucifixion style, I just got like that little taste of what it was like for Christ. I'm not saying it's completely exactly the same thing, but I got a little taste. And that has changed my outlook on other things. The value I have for my children's lives is even greater, I guess, than if I gave birth normally. And I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. Perhaps you're going through the same thing. Maybe you're pregnant or your wife is pregnant and you're having anxious thoughts and feelings. And even if you're not going through a pregnancy, but you're going through something rough and you feel alone and you feel like it's out of control. Well, it is out of your control, and all you got to do is surrender to God and offer it to Him. Just say, Lord, this is yours. Do what thou wilt. So this year I pray that you surrender everything to the Lord. Surrender everything to the Lord so that He can make miracles out of what we might seem to think are tragedies. My name's Alexis, and thank you so much for joining me. And I'll see you next time. God bless.